Are we going to see that next round of fall tornadoes? Yes, all modes of severe weather are on the forecast for Saturday specifically, so I think that tornado risk will be something to watch on Saturday. Basically what this means is if you could find that middle point between the two of them, you could probably find that severe weather. So today we're watching for western Kansas, and then tomorrow as we head into Friday, we're going to be watching for Oklahoma into Kansas. Okay, so this area right here is where we're watching for that severe weather tomorrow. Then as we head into Saturday, we've got another area of concern right across Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana, all included in that storm risk. Now, anytime that we have these troughs, a dip in the jet stream that move across the United States, we expect another round of severe weather. So if you look off to the west as we head into early next week, we have another round of storms most likely coming our way. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But let's go ahead and talk about today. Let's start with your hail forecast first. So your significant hail model is what we're going to watch for today and tomorrow. So we've got western Kansas today, then into Oklahoma and Kansas tomorrow. Let's take a look right along I-70, hugging the Kansas and Colorado state line. That's where we're watching for some of the largest hailstones today. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I know that you saw those oranges peek in there right around the I-70 marker. Usually that means golf ball sized hail. However, I don't think it's going to get that large today. We're using our meteorologist intuition here. We've looked at the models and we say maybe up to $half size, but for the most part, we're going to see quarters and smaller today. Colby, McCook, North Platte, all in the forecast for hail today. Again, we're keeping those hail sizes small. What we like to look at here is what do the models say? What happened yesterday? What's the setup right now? We look at the past, the current, and the future, and all of that has led us to quarter-size hail, even though some models want to trend a little bit larger. So here you go, your max forecasted hail size today. I've already told you, we're going quarters. Alrighty, moving on, let's talk about the wind risk today. Once again, it's a low risk. I think this may be a little bit more widespread, 60, 65, maybe very isolated up to 70 mile per hour wind speeds. But I think a lot of people are in here to talk about tomorrow. So one more risk to talk about, and then we'll get to Friday and Saturday's storm risk. Let's talk about that tornado risk today. It's a low risk. It's a level 1 on a scale of 5. However, we could still see an isolated storm or two spin up a tornado. What we're watching for are what we call discrete supercells. So anytime that we could get an isolated storm away from the pack, that's where we could probably see those more impressive storm risks, you know, that tornado risk, that wind risk, that hail risk is all going to be elevated whenever we can see these discrete supercells. So you can see that we've got those morning storms that move through Kansas right now, and then we've got another round of storms later on this afternoon and evening. Let's zoom down into the western side of Kansas, and then we'll officially move on to Friday's forecast. Here we go. What you're watching for here are some of those isolated cells. I always like to watch these tail end Charlies here. Those are the ones right along the state line that you're going to have to keep an eye on. Timeline for severe weather today, right around 5 to 10 o'clock tonight. After that, storms or maybe even just light rain will be moving into the central portion of Kansas. That brings us to Friday. So let's skip ahead here. I want to get right down into Oklahoma and Kansas because this really kicks off a more significant pattern of severe weather, not just tomorrow, but also on Saturday. You're going to see widespread showers and storms, very, very easy to spot right here. This line of storms that stretches from the Midwest all the way down to Oklahoma, that will be what we watch 2 days in a row, both Friday and Saturday. Zooming down to see it one more time, what you're going to see are storms starting up in the St. Joe, Kansas City area, right along that Missouri-Kansas state line. They're going to start isolated at first, but quickly become more scattered and widespread as we head into the evening hours. So watch this timeline here, because a lot of people will be asleep as storms come through. Here we go. Again, I mentioned starting in KC and St. Joe, slowly unzipping down into Wichita, and then unzipping down into the northwestern portion of Oklahoma. We're going to continue to see this track to the east. Now, what I see here from this storm risk, remember whenever we talked about those isolated, discrete supercells? That's what we're watching for farther down to the south. Now, I think it's a very low chance. However, I am seeing early on Saturday morning a pretty decent risk for some hail in Oklahoma, so we're going to have to watch this area on Saturday as these storms continue to track across the state. So remember, starting up here early on in the evening and then extending all the way down into Wichita and Woodward through the late evening hours and then overnight into Tulsa and Oklahoma City. Here is your wind risk for Friday. We could see some high winds across KC, across Wichita. These storms are not terribly impressive to me, so I kept it a low risk farther down into southern Oklahoma, where storms are going to be a lot more isolated. I went with ping pong ball size hail for Friday. Michaela and I were talking about that yesterday and this morning, and we were looking at the best place to see that larger hail. Again, we put it down in Oklahoma, where those storms are going to be a little bit more isolated. I think it may be more of a wind and potentially even a flooding risk the farther north that you go. You're going to hear the thunder overnight on Friday night into Saturday. You're going to probably hear the high winds as well. For the most part, that tornado risk is very low on Friday night into Saturday morning. Things really start to change Saturday morning whenever storms get into Kansas and Missouri. So we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But as I mentioned, on Friday, we do not have a significant hail or tornado, we don't have a significant tornado risk. I know there was some confusion with that graphic there. Alrighty, before we move on to Saturday, do we have any weather questions? I see Chipper's on here. Thanks for joining us, saying, hey, HailTrace team. Thanks for joining us today. Everyone put in your location, where are you watching from? Michael is asking about Kansas City, Missouri. I know you guys are in the risk. Friday night, okay? So your Friday evening plans, keep an eye on that radar. Any other weather questions, put those in the comments. I can see that on the side of the screen over here. Just a little recap of what we've talked about so far, because I know I've thrown a lot of information at you today. Today, we're watching for storms out in western Kansas. Tomorrow, we move into places like Kansas City, just like Michael said, Wichita, Topeka, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa. It's a late night system. Look at that timeline, 2:30 in the morning, and it's still raining in these areas. As we head into Saturday, which I know a lot of people are keeping their eye on Saturday. We started talking about Saturday on Monday. We are still talking about it. It has actually upgraded the risk. Storm Prediction Center has upgraded the risk to a level 2 risk, highlighted there in orange. So this level 1 risk extends all the way up into Ohio, down into Louisiana and Mississippi, out into the eastern portion of Oklahoma, and then we've also got Missouri in the risk as well. But then that level 2 risk encompasses the entirety of Arkansas and a few surrounding states as well. So let's take a look at the timeline here. I'm going to fast forward. There we go. Here's your timeline. So as I mentioned, storms are coming out of Kansas City, Oklahoma City by early Saturday morning. They're going to continue to track to the southeast, but I think you need to watch sunrise on Saturday. I'm very interested to see if these storms may have like a second wind, a second round of maybe some early morning convection. We're going to have to keep an eye on those models here. Again, we're still several days out, so we're going to get more information over the next few days. Widespread scattered showers and storms by the early morning hours on Saturday across southern Missouri, and then things start to get interesting by Saturday afternoon and into the evening hours. I think what we're going to see here is we're going to shift from that original hail and wind threat to now a wind and tornado threat later on in the day, and that is most likely as these storms come into Kentucky and Tennessee, and then right on the state line near Arkansas and Missouri. So right in this area is where I'm watching for the highest tornado threat. Now, the Storm Prediction Center has not released their wind, hail, tornado breakdown quite yet. However, I'll go ahead and show you what we have on the board. Here's your wind risk on Saturday. Again, I've highlighted places like Little Rock and Memphis for those higher wind speeds. Again, right in this area, I think that we could see the storms start to really strengthen, and that's whenever you're going to get those stronger wind speeds. We're talking about anywhere from 60 to maybe 70, maybe up to 75 mile per hour wind speeds here. Let's take a look at the hail forecast on Saturday. I told you that we start with that hail forecast, we start with that hail risk farther out to the west, and then early morning storms, remember, and then we transition to more of a wind risk later on. So that hail risk is going to go down, or at least the sizes are going to go down the farther east that you go. Before I move on to the Atlantic, do we have any weather questions here? We've got Arkansas joining us. Let me go back to some of our graphics here. Arkansas, depending on where you are at in Arkansas, your timeline starts early in the morning. We're talking like 6 a.m. all the way through the evening hours. It's going to be an all-day event for Arkansas. So storms finally exit your region by about 6, maybe 7 o'clock, except for some lingering storms across the central portion. And don't count out these storms down here as we head into the late evening hours. We've got Texas here. I don't know where Toledo Band is. If you're in the northeastern side of Texas, you could get some storms on Saturday. However, anything outside of northeastern Texas, you're going to stay dry all the way through the weekend. Severe clear. Questions about St. Louis. Okay, let me restart this graphic and let's see the timeline for St. Louis. Storms will start early on Saturday morning. Well, let's say about mid-Saturday morning. What are we going to go with here? Maybe 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock here. You're going to get a lot of rain through the late morning hours, 10 to 11 o'clock, but storms will be out of your area by the afternoon. We're talking about 2, maybe 3 o'clock. You're going to be severe clear. Your Saturday evening plans are all good in St. Louis. Now for St. Louis storm risks here, I think we do have a low risk for high wind, anywhere from 60 to 70 mile per hour strong wind speeds. And then we also have you guys in that quarter to $50 size hail. Now that's the information that we know right now. However, I think that we could see this change over the next 24, maybe 48 hours as we have more information coming in. Our models get really good about 24 hours out, so make sure that you check back in with our Friday noon show tomorrow.